Back to order. Hello. I'd like to call everybody back to order.
Spread the curve a little bit, wash their hands frequently, and don't touch their face. And of course, other things like cover your cough.
Hello. I'd like to call everybody back to order, please. Thank you. We're going to start off with ordinances 2020-03, amendment of Chapter 13, Door County Code Airport Regulations. Mr. Ninus.
I will move for approval of ordinance 2020-03.
Fisher here, I'll second that motion.
This, with the combining of the airport and highway committee, this actually is a cleanup of the language of chapter 13 of the Door County Code.
Okay. Any questions or further explanations by anybody?
Question here. I have a question, Supervisor Boltman.
Go ahead, Bob.
On page 59, part of under Exhibit A, the very first thing, it's letter I. It's referencing the only permitted hunting activities allowed on airport property. And I see that in addition to deer, goose, and turkey, which make a lot of sense to me regarding an airport and airport safety, coyote was added. Why is coyote? Can someone explain why coyote was added to this list of possible animals to kill on the airport property?
I don't think it was added.
Can you say that, Grant?
Yeah, Bob, I don't think that was added. I think the coyote is in there, but I could be wrong.
It's in blue. It's in blue. So I guess I'm responding to that. I don't know.
And I don't have a color copy, but I don't know if. Yeah.
The others are in black.
Okay, then maybe mine's not color. I apologize for that. If it has been added, I can't say why. I know that some of these revisions were prompted by the recent FAA audit.
Right.
I mean, are coyotes a problem at the airport? I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan of killing dogs. It's my beef.
Okay, wait a moment, Bob. Go ahead, Ken.
It was identified to the FAA audit. I don't think it's a widespread problem, but it is listed as an item that can be, I guess, taken care of should there be one be there. Obviously, if there's a plane landing, you obviously do not want to hit a coyote.
Sure.
You're referring to the private dogs possibly being shot.
Well, no, I mean.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Supervisor Anagle.
Go ahead.
On page 58, 13.10, snowmobiles and motor vehicles. I'm presuming the striking of the snowmobile section is because they don't have a trail along that section anymore.
That's a good question too. I had that one too.
That's my understanding, yes.
And the highway department committee doesn't know because this would have gone before them, right? A member somewhere there.
Supervisor Gunlickson here. You guys are correct. I believe that FAA regulations don't allow ATVs, snowmobiles, and UTVs on airport property.
Oh, so it'd be a combination from that reasoning. Okay.
Other questions?
Supervisor Boltman again. So this is still around this idea of hunting on airport property. I guess I'm not super familiar with, the exact extent of the property, but do we, are there people that regularly hunt deer, goose, and turkey on the property, or is this just for basically the county to kill these animals if they're lingering around the runways, or do we actually have hunters going in there on an annual basis for deer, goose, and turkey, and potentially coyote hunting?
Yes, we do have hunters that actually hunt the property.
So this is where, again, it's like I'm not a fan of killing coyotes just for the idea of killing dogs. I think it's unethical generally. And so I don't like the idea of being able to, are we allowing people to go in there and kill coyotes? Again, if there being a problem and there's an issue with safety, I get that. But I guess that's where I'm still having an issue with killing coyotes.
In general, the property is fenced, and we try to keep all animals outside the fenced part of the airport.
Supervisor Anagle, the people that are interested in hunting on these properties, if I remember correctly, they're required to get a county permit of some sort, right, for access?
Yes, that's correct.
Who do they have to see?
They would see the airport manager, or in this case, our superintendent.
This is Helen Bacon. Would they need to apply for a permit, much like anyone hunting in one of our parks?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I just didn't notice that wording in this documentation, that's all.
Any other questions? We will go to a roll call vote since this is an ordinance.
Howard. Aye. Lino.
Aye.
Lundahl.
Aye.
Ninus.
Aye.
Norton.
Aye.
Aye. Lee's Wanacek.
Aye.
Wait.
Aye.
Austin.
Aye.
Bacon.
Aye.
Boltman.
Aye.
Shomo. Aye. David Engelbert.
Aye.
Roy Engelbert.
Aye.
Enigo.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Henriksen. Olsted.
Aye.
I'm Peter. Aye. Cook.
Aye.
That has passed. Thank you. Now we're going to move to a couple of ordinances, 2020-02, 2020-04, and we'll also bring ourselves back up to the resolution 2020-24. Grant will be handling most of this information, but we will start with 2020-02. Invoke Authority 59.10.1, Wisconsin statutes to be a self-organized county. Somebody is shuffling paper around their microphone. It's very difficult to hear. Thank you.
All right, we are weighing the option of becoming a self-organized county primarily for reasons related to Resolution 20-24, which we will discuss later. But in essence, the statutes allow Wisconsin counties to designate themselves as self-organized counties. And the three primary reasons for doing so is the ability to set staggered terms for supervisors. Second is the flexibility in setting county board members' compensation. And the third is the right to fill board vacancy by other means, which is related to Resolution 20-24. To give you some history, there are, as of today's date, I suspect there will be more given the present circumstances, 37 of the 72 counties that have opted to be self-organized. So obviously that means that 35 have opted to not self-organize. We've considered this over the years. I think the last time is when we had a discussion around 10, 11 years ago, whether we were going to establish staggered terms, and that didn't get a lot of wind, so we never went down this path. But the primary reason we want to do this today is the concerns with the upcoming spring elections and the very real possibility, nobody believes it's going to happen, that they might be postponed. And this would give us the ability to do what we need to do in terms of declaring and filling vacancies on the county board in the event the April 7th election is postponed. And we can talk about that a little bit more when we get up to Resolution 2024. I included in the packet a fact sheet from the University of Wisconsin Extension, which does a very good job in a very short amount of space of explaining this. I don't know if anybody has any questions or.
I guess I just have a comment I'd like to make. This all came up. I don't want us to think about the staggered terms. I don't want us to think about supervisors' pay. This came up strictly in the context of if the election is not held on April 7th, if it's delayed past the date of April 20th, there would not be a county board in place or any other local elective positions in place. And this would allow us to continue to appoint all the existing supervisors to continue in that role until such time as the election was held. And that's simply the reason we were looking at it. It's hopefully never has to be invoked, hopefully never happens. If we have the election, it all becomes a moot point. But it was to allow the county government to continue until an election was actually held.
That's correct. And, we're in uncharted waters in many respects. And this is just one of those. We've never had a situation in Wisconsin where an election was going to be potentially postponed, leaving the elected office vacant for an indefinite period of time. Again, we hope it doesn't happen, but I think we need to plan and provide for the circumstance in which it does happen so that we can continue operating as a county board.
And this also would assume that the state, if they choose to postpone the election, does not put in place some other methodology to allow this to happen.
Question, Supervisor Boltman. So I'm looking at this fact sheet, and I'm assuming, Grant, that the bullet points here, this is like the exhaustive list of what it means to be self-organized, that there aren't other things that might also come with this?
These are the three big items. You have a little bit more flexibility overall, but these are the three big areas where it makes a difference. So yes, to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Go ahead, Susan.
Is there a downside to doing this, a disadvantage or a problem with it?
No.
Supervisor Renagle.
Go ahead.
There was not enough time for me to go through the statutes and completely understand the way it's written. But in my very brief review of it, my mind is being set in the direction of, if we do this, we've had discussions in the past of having a set salary. I'll give you my example. The town of Big Harbor has a set monthly salary, and then we get paid per diem for each meeting. I've been told routinely that we cannot do that at the county board level, and basically partially agree with that. My thing is, upon reading about this, my little bit of reading and following up and looking through other information implies that if we'd have done this self-organized, this would allow us to do that. Is that a reasonable assumption, Grant?
Yeah, self-organization would allow the board to be, as reading right from the UW exception fact sheet, as creative as it wished.
So that being said, all the time we spent on that particular conversation, the years that I've been here, plus the years before I was here, why wasn't this brought up during that set of conversations, which would have put to bed this conversation that we probably have 20 plus hours as a board discussing?
It just never came into my radar in that context. I know we had talked about it in the context of use of staggered terms for supervisors.
Okay, so then the next comment is the governor in the state of Wisconsin, to the best of my knowledge, with the assistance. Is Joel Kitchens here still? I think he's left.
No.
I wish I'd asked him to stay for this. Under those guides, if the state of Wisconsin so chooses to push back the election cycle, that is valid for every elected position that's due next week, Tuesday, a week from today. Not just county, but every municipality that has some variation of election.
Correct. Yes.
This is not a lightly taken discussion, as we've seen through other states that are using it as a reference to the primary aspect, the Democratic primary, which is valid in our case as well. My question is, it seems unusual that this is being brought up at this time. I understand the logic behind it, but it wasn't brought up during our wage discussions that we've had multiple conversations about. And it's being brought up now underneath this application, but yet the governor and or the legislature does not take pushing back elections with minimal thought. Those governors that have done it, I presume, have figured out how some way to deal with this lapse in governing bodies across their state. I would presume that our governor and our legislators would feel the same way, that if they so choose to do this, which is a strong probability, despite what the news says, I find it difficult to believe that if they have the authority to push it back, that they don't have the authority to grant extensions of services or extension of appointments or whatever it might be in order to resolve this very issue we're discussing today.
David, I don't think that's the issue. We're not saying that the governor may not do that. He may very well do that. We were trying to be proactive in case the state doesn't do something, because we can't be assured that they are, that we would have something in place where we continue continuity in our government, in our county government level at least, until an election was held, whether that was 30 days or 60 days or 90 days or 2 weeks, whatever it was. We were just trying to be proactive and taking a look at how we could continue to do what we needed to do during this emergency period of time in the pandemic.
And that, I understand that, but there are probably in the neighborhood of more than 500 various municipalities that will be in the exact same boat. And one would think if our governing bodies at the state level do push it back, they will make conditions that will allow us to continue operating, because we are not the only ones granted more than a third
of course, and we all hope that's the case. We were just trying to be proactive in case something didn't happen, since we're only now 7 days away from the election. But it's simply put, nothing else behind it other than trying to get continuity in government and look at everything we possibly could do. We've been working very hard the last 2 or 3 weeks, working through all the possibilities. This is just one of hundreds that we've looked at of things that we wanted to bring forward in case we needed to move forward with something like this. That's why we're talking about it.
If I can add, there are 3 possibilities. The one that I was primarily concerned with, and still am, is that a court would suspend the elections. The case in Brown County has been dismissed. There are at least 2 other cases pending. The governor's office has said that they believe they have the authority to postpone the election, but because the term of the elected officials is statutory, the governor doesn't have the ability to extend those. And the legislature has been, at least if the news reports are to be believed and their quotes are to be believed, has indicated they will have no interest in convening the legislature if the governor postpones the election to extend the terms or find a way to appoint members for the interim term. And as David pointed out, this ordinance and this school of thought is not mine alone. The corporation councils throughout the state have thought about this. The counties that are in real concern here are the ones that have county administrators, because the county administrators, administrative coordinators, the administrative coordinators do not have the same authority to act as a county administrator or a county executive. Quite frankly, in a county with a county executive or a county administrator, they could get by for probably through the end of the budget year without having a county board. It's a less than ideal situation, and we want to avoid that. But this ordinance is a collective thought of probably about 25 or 30 court councils that have been working on these various issues. And we're kind of making things up as we go because this is unprecedented. But this is really the only way that I see that if the worst case scenario happens, the election gets postponed and there's no provision for filling those offices that are vacated by mere passage of time, then this would allow us to fill the gap between the postponement of the election and when the new election is held and the electors take office after the election.
So that being said, being that we as a county board are being asked to approve a series of documents that are intertied, And the generic reasoning we're being asked to do this is relevant to the possibility of the statewide elections being pushed back because of this COVID-19. I would be comfortable if the resolution states for the purposes of should the state of Wisconsin push back the April 7th election only. Or to I shouldn't say that, but for the purposes of, related specifically to filling the vacancies during, should the government push back the election date. And then later on in the year, we actually tackle the rest of the ramifications of doing this.
So again, this is Ken. The one thing that we're trying to do is we're just trying to put ourselves, when we do this type of thing, it's always to plan for the worst, hope for the best. So we're planning for the worst. Our intention today, again, there's really no harm with us becoming self-organized. Again, the primary areas are identified in that fact sheet. Again, we were going to discuss the resolution to 2024, just for an FYI. Our Grant and I are saying that we necessarily don't have to adopt that today. We just want to have that in front of you. And the idea would be is that should the governor or the court, in essence, postpone the elections, we would call an emergency meeting and enact that resolution. Our main goal today, our recommendation is to adopt this ordinance because it puts us in a better position in terms of being able to react.
And it's the only way we can react. I've also drafted the resolution, if you opt to adopt it today, that it wouldn't go into effect until the situation that you discussed, David, occurred. So you can adopt the resolution today, but that won't actually occur unless the election is postponed. So, but as Ken said, enacting ordinance number 2020-02 does nothing but invokes the authority of 5910 sub 1 for Door County to be a self-organized county. It doesn't have to exercise any of the powers that gives it. The three are primarily listed in the UW extension fact sheet. It just allows us to do so if we want to.
And I understand that. My concern is that we've all sat in the positions and watched our state, federal, and even our lower level and current and same level governments react based on an event, and the ramifications aren't fully exposed. One of the more recent ones I'll give you is purchasing of the Yonker building. Another one that we'll give you a couple of years back was the disposition of the daycare center on Cherry Road, where we were just going to let it go without investigating why the county board at that time, some 25 plus years ago, put a condition that the county board be involved in the sale of the property. It just makes me nervous when we make a change like this in the operational procedures due to an event. Especially when apparently other county boards have discussed going self-organized and have turned it down.
Let me just clarify one thing. There are, in our word, I guess, self-organized counties before this even became an issue. Again, it's right that certain county boards have adopted this because they wanted to have the flexibility to exercise one of those three items. I will tell you across the board, I've not heard of any counties actually turning down pursuing this option. I think Grant had stated that throughout the state, WCA in all of their calls the past 2 weeks have asked counties to actually consider approaching and actually discussing it. This is
Question, Supervisor Boltman.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess, the idea of Door County having a little more authority and, our ability to do things maybe more the way we want, I think certainly on the surface looks good to me. I'm curious if at some point in the future, if a county invokes the authority of 59 Chapter 10, Unit 1, and does this self-organized, goes the self-organized route, can a county board in the future revoke it from themselves and go back to the way we were?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
And maybe so everybody understands we're not required to enact or adopt anything that enables any of the powers that this would potentially give the county. It just gives the county the option to do so.
And if it all sounded great, the supervisor, if it's all sounded great, then why did other county board members decide not to do it in the past? When it was brought to the county board in the past?
The last time I remember the discussion again is when we were talking about staggered terms. You can only do that if you're a self-organized county, but because this was prior to the last decennial, there just wasn't the appetite to go to staggered terms because, and I'm getting a little bit of far here, but somebody basically has to accept a shorter term and somebody has to accept a longer term, and deciding who got those got to be a bit contentious, but that's the last I remember. I don't know prior to that whether we've ever entertained the idea. Not in my tenure, which goes back to 1997.
And much like today, we are being asked to do this for one purpose, as opposed to the ramifications of the entire capacity of this. And if that's the case, then that board at that time clearly didn't discuss all the options that are available rather than just the staggered term issue.
Right, but again, you don't have to, if we were to adopt the ordinance or enact the ordinance today and adopt the resolution filling the vacancies if the election is postponed, we don't ever have to have staggered terms, and we don't ever have to give ourselves the flexibility with the compensation for supervisors. Those would have to be taken up at a different time and either enacted by an ordinance or adopted via a resolution. But that's where we're, I guess in my mind, there's no harm at this stage in invoking the authority and considering the resolution, but that's a decision for the county board.
And I don't necessarily disagree, other than the fact that now, like before, here we are again talking about a topic that would resolve the salary issue 8 years ago.
Well, we can talk about that all day long. It's not part of what brought this up. And the salary thing will come up again. It always does. So if you have this in place at that point in time, we'll be able to change it then, or we can change it later.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Biz.
David Engelbert?
One moment, please. Biz has the floor.
I think the discussion we're having is good. However, I think the ordinance, and for that matter, even the resolution 2020-24, is really no need to adopt either one of them today. Because as the administrator said, if the governor acts, we probably will have an emergency meeting and then we can do this, adopt both of them. But I don't think we have to get ahead of ourselves and adopt these things today, because as Grant said, if the election goes on the 7th, then both of these are immaterial points.
Yes, that's true. Please bear in mind, we brought this forward for discussion today. Doesn't have to be today. We wanted everybody to see the 2 or 3 things that might be necessary if the election doesn't happen. We're just trying to cover all the bases in an emergency situation. And this was 2 or 3 of the things that came up in that point of discussion.
This is Helen Bacon. When I know we discussed having 2 meetings a month, I was just trying to think through if it was delayed. I'm assuming it is going to be delayed quite a bit in the future, not just a week or 2. Is there? I mean, would you anticipate that we would have a regularly scheduled county board meeting before the next proposed possible election date?
No, not before the election date. I personally am very hopeful that the election goes on as scheduled, and hopefully it will. The next regularly scheduled meeting that we would have would be a reorganizational meeting, which would be the 21st. Unless there was an emergency meeting called for some other purpose, right?
David Engelbert has a question.
Go ahead.
I guess I have to agree with Mr. Enikel, Mr. Hurley. We're making an assumption that this election may be canceled. Very hopeful that it goes on. I'm more hopeful that if the state does something to cancel it, that they provide a means of the county or whatever municipality to continue governing. The worst case scenario, if we hear the night of before the election and we have to do something, we can have an emergency meeting. Time that those elected would be installed into their office a week later. This is something that the information has been before county boards in the past since 97, I guess, when the extension put some of this material out. They haven't taken the action. And now out of, let's say, fear, we need to act immediately. It's unnecessary.
Supervisor.
One moment, please. Go ahead, Ken.
Again, just to the members of, just for the members of the county board, obviously the items are out for discussion, which is fine, and we can postpone them and enact them at an emergency meeting. When Grant and I were strategizing earlier, when we put this all together, we were recommending that we'd adopt this one today, just to have that done and in place, because there is no harm either way having it. By enacting it, it does not change anything moving forward. It only changes if we take up those actions for each one of those items. We are also fine with postponing it. That's fine. But again, by adopting this one today, it puts us in no different position either way. But again, we're fine with also waiting until if we should have to call an emergency meeting. We're just, again, in terms of getting prepared, we're just trying to put together the best strategy for us to move forward.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When do our terms expire? At the election or on the 21st?
At midnight on the 20th.
Midnight on the 20th. All right. I'm okay with the discussion. I see absolutely no need to act on this at this point in time. If the election is postponed, you can call a special sometime between the 7th and the 20th, before midnight the 20th, and then vote on these items. I think that would be the prudent way to go at this time. Give us the information, but postpone any action until we find out whether the election will be held on the 7th, because then we'll have what we need. We'll have our questions answered as to which way we want to go. That'd be my take on it.
Go ahead, Susan.
Ken will be reassured that on this one we disagree. I don't see any reason why we can't do these things. I mean, I appreciate that you and Ken and Grant and everybody has been brainstorming the possibilities so that we can meet with a minimum amount of meetings. There's absolutely no downside to doing this today. So I don't see why we don't do it just out of prudence. The resolution spells out that if the thing doesn't happen, it's moot. So there's no harm in dealing with it and being efficient and being prepared. So I think we should.
Vinny, go ahead.
Supervisor Shaw. I just would like to agree with Susie's comments. I think that anything we can do as a county board to help the administration and help the staff to be able to know what to expect and move forward. They have enough other emergency decisions to make every day. So if we can help and get this done today, that's what I would prefer.
Supervisor Boltman, I have a question.
Hey, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much does it cost to hold an emergency meeting? Like, is that an extra expense we're looking at if for some reason in a week or two we say, oops, we need to do this? I mean, is calling an emergency meeting going to cost us money?
Well,
just a per diem, that's it.
The daily per diem, the $150 per supervisor.
And $31.50
mileage.
$4,000.
So about $4,000 roughly.
Or we could just, vote on it now.
Supervisor Enigal.
Go ahead, David.
So we know we have a planned meeting for the 21st. That is effectively after the end of all of our terms. There's no reason that it must be on the 21st. We could certainly have it a week earlier. If it was not, if other than the reorganizational aspect, we certainly could have a regular meeting a week earlier. So if possible, I would make a motion to postpone enacting any of these items until our next meeting. End of my motion. That way, if we have it we have the organizational meeting on the 21st. Fine. If we find that tomorrow they cancel voting, then we can have it between the 7th and the 21st, and it's going to answer all of our questions. I'm more concerned about we've always watched our governments do decision-making processes on a fly and never look at the rest of the ramifications that really matter. So my motion would be to postpone the discussion of these topics and to postpone the voting on these topics to the next meeting, next scheduled meeting. And I'll be looking for a second.
Mr. Chair.
I'll second that. David Engelbert.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
go ahead.
What are the possible ramifications of passing this today?
What are the what ramifications?
Yeah, what are the possible ramifications if we pass this today? Downside. The downsides to it, because for my perspective is that it's before us now. Our corporate counsel, our administration, they're looking at the potential of something happen. That's what we need to do, is potentially plan for the future. Why not put this date? So if people are opposing that and want to postpone it, then what are the potentials of not doing that? Or excuse me, of passing it today? That's what I would like to hear.
Okay, this is Ken, and Grant kind of nod. You can see in the camera, but both Grant and I feel, again, just breaking this apart. If you're looking at ordinance 2020-02, there is no downside of adopting that today. Again, you're just adopting it. You're stating that you become self-organized, but the abilities or the powers that are identified within that, you're not actually enacting unless you take further action. So again, by enacting 2020-02, there is no up or downside in our opinion. It just puts us in a position of being self-organized.
I would agree. It just gives the county board more flexibility within its operations, but it need not exercise that flexibility if it chooses not to. So in terms of the ordinance being enacted, there really isn't any downside.
This is Helen Bacon. What would be the advantages for those of you that are acting as our emergency decision makers, figuring things out? What are the advantages to you if we pass this?
I mean, again, from our standpoint, the only advantage of why we have here today is it puts us in a position to react should the state take some type of action. So again, Helen, your question is what does it do for us? The reason why we're here is we prepared it that way. So that way it does put us in a position to react should the state do something. Again, as we stated before, if you want to wait as well, in terms of if we call emergency meeting, we can do that as well. Again, but we're just saying we have it here. We had it prepared for today. Again, in our opinion, there's no up or downside. Well, upside we're prepared, but there is no downside of actually passing this because you really don't use it unless you enact the other parts of it. So it takes time to actually use any of it.
Well, this is Helen again. I guess I'm just looking at the amount of time that I know people have spent even trying to decipher what's coming from the state government. And it seems to me that it might be prudent for us to pass this because it is one less thing that you need to worry about in the future. I think it's easy to say call an emergency meeting, and we're all here today in person. If we have more positive cases, that might not be an option for many of us. I don't think calling an emergency meeting is that easy And it also takes a lot of time. It takes time away from staff who could be doing other things to continue trying to even keep this county running. So I guess in that way, I would be in favor of passing it.
Here.
Wait a second.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a question for the clerk. Must have an average about what the turnout would be on an election like coming up April 7th. And do you have any numbers of how many absentee ballots have been requested from the clerks? So in other words, maybe the governor is trying to get his arms around that. Maybe the turnout at the polls isn't going to be as big as normal because of the absentee ballots. And if he looks at that, he may say, let it go on. Do you have any numbers, Joe?
We're upwards of 40% of registered voters right now that have requested an absentee ballot. So we do not expect that those coming to the polling place that we're going to have a large turnout in person on election day.
So you're thinking it's maybe probably less than half of the people who show up at the polls are absentee ballot.
That would be correct. And as of Friday, obviously there's been many days in between, but from our state representatives, both Senator Jacques and Representative Kitchens, their word to us was that election will not be delayed.
Thank you.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now we're talking about ordinance number 2020-02. I'm reading it, I've got it right here in front of me. I see no place on here where it says this resolution or this ordinance will only go into effect if the election is not held on the 7th. Now, if it said that, I'd be okay with it. But if it doesn't, we're being foolish to, in my opinion, to pass this if nothing happens. I can see problems by having us be a self-organized county. I agree with Mr. Hennigle. We shouldn't be doing this today. Unless you put that be it further resolved in there, add that to it, that only takes effect if the election is not held on April 7th, 2020. That's the only way I would vote for it.
Do you want to make an amendment to there is a motion on the floor to postpone. Do you want to make an amendment to that motion?
No, not at this time. If the motion fails to not take the vote, we get up to take the vote. Well, then I would make the argument to add that it only takes effect if the election is postponed. I don't see the need to do that right now.
Okay. Anybody else?
Supervisor Anago.
Hold on. Mr. Osted.
I call for the question.
I concur.
There's a motion to postpone pending that has to be resolved.
Right. Okay, so we will have a roll call vote on the motion to postpone.
So, for clarification, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and I vote is to postpone any decision on this ordinance.
Well, I'll ask some clarification because when Mr. Enigal made the motion, he said these things without specifying what things. So perhaps he'd like to specify specifically what ordinances or things he's referring to.
I am referring to the 3 integral items to be postponed until our next meeting, which would be this resolution 24, and Or actually just ordinance number and resolution 24, and what was the other number?
It was just those two, 04.
Just those- Okay. Can I expand on my logic?
So it'd be 2020-02 and 2020-24.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I expand on my logic?
Let's just,
No.
let's just vote.
No. Go ahead, John.
Lino,
Yes.
Lundo. Nay. Minus,
Yes.
Norton. Nay. Robillard.
Sorry, do it again.
Hubbard.
I just unmuted. Do it again. Say it again. No, I just unmuted. You were muted.
Oh, I'm sorry, we were muted. No.
Hurley,
Yes.
Lees Wanacek. No. Wait,
Yes.
Austin,
Yes.
Bacon,
No.
Boltman,
No.
Shomo,
No.
if it doesn't make any difference. David Engelbert,
Yes.
Roy Engelbert,
No.
Inigo,
Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
Gullickson,
No.
Halsted,
Yes.
Pine Peter,
No.
Cook,
Yes.
Kohout.
No.
She's deciding.
So,
No, they.
one moment, please.
11 ayes, 10 noes.
11 aye, 10 no. So the motion to postpone has been approved.
What was Susan's vote?
Wait.
What was Susan's vote?
I was keeping track of that. I had 10, and I want it to pass, but I thought only had 10 aye votes.
What was Susan's vote? Yes or no?
Vote was no.
Susan voted no, and that was the 11th vote.
That's the way I took it, unless I missed somebody else said.
I got 10-10. and
Okay, just
Susan-
wait. Let her recount, please.
Which is the best you can.
That's what I have.
When she recounts, it still is 11 ayes, 10 noes. So the motion has passed to postpone.
Yep. Okay.
Official.
Yep. That's it.
Okay.
Recycling that.
Okay, so Grant, we need to go 04 yet? Okay, so ordinance 2020-04, procedure for convening county board and declared emergency 59.11.2A.
Again, in reacting to the situation, I located a statute 59.11.2A, which gives the county board by ordinance the ability to establish a procedure for convening the board in a declared emergency as defined by the county ordinance, and thought that, again, trying to be proactive for future emergencies, not this one, that it would be better to have a defined process than not. And a defined process is set forth in the ordinance itself, and in essence sets a hierarchy that the Door County Board chairperson, or in his or her absence, the vice chairperson or county administrator would be authorized to declare an emergency for the purposes of convening the county board. Now, we managed to make it work at present with the existing authority and our rules of order, but since there is a statute that allows us to do this by ordinance, it just seems to me that we should have it on our books as an ordinance the next time we have a defined procedure and we're not trying to find authority in various parts of 59 to do what we did.
Comments, questions?
Anigal's question.
Go ahead, Dave.
Hold on, give me a sec. Sorry, I got my computer screwed up. My only question was on the be it further resolved line 22. Why 2 hours as opposed to something else? I mean, I'm just curious what drives the logic behind such a small window of time, and what kind of emergencies are we possibly, that we may need to be in that fall. Otherwise, I'm fine with it. I just want an understanding of the 2 hours, because we're going to have people complaining if we pick and do an emergency. It feels not necessary.
That's consistent. I believe the open meetings law gives us the authority to do that now. And again, you can never predict what somebody's going to do. That's in large part a call that's made with the concurrence of the Corporation Council to declare that there's an emergency under the statute. Since 1997, I've never found a reason to vary from the ordinary notice requirements that we've ever run into anything that we require that we cut it as short as 2 hours. I suppose we could imagine something, a tornado that strikes but.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember if 2 hours was one of the more common emergency designations. I thought it was 4, but otherwise I'm fine with it.
Supervisor Boltman, I have a question.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In that paragraph, lines 16 through 19, that be it further resolved, it says, if there's not sufficient time to notify board supervisors by mailing an agenda, an attempt will be made to notify each supervisor by phone, messenger, or any other practical means. So my question is, I guess any other practical means maybe is all it needs to say, because it leaves you open for anything. But I'm just wondering, do we need to be more specific? Do we need to say email or electronically? I don't know if this is old wording from like a time before, we had so much electronic devices around us. And then my other question is messenger, like, does that mean like a physical person coming in? Yeah.
Right. We're all old enough.
So I just want to make sure that we're, do we need to say anything else in there, or does the term any other practical means just kind of encompass everything we needed to say? That's all I was wondering.
Since I drafted it, I think, or any other practical means gives us as much flexibility as we possibly can have. And it doesn't tie us to a particular technology. As we're all aware, 20 years from now, maybe we'll have to dust this off. There'll be communication that we can't even conceive of today. So,
Anybody else? Okay. We would need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Who was the first person to make the motion? Cook.
Please modify second.
Thank you. All right, this is an ordinance, so we need to go to a roll call vote.
Lundell. Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Norton. Aye. Robillard. Aye. Burley.
Aye.
Please Wanacek. Aye. Wheat. Aye. Austin.
Aye.
Bacon. Aye. Boltman.
Aye.
Shomo. Aye. Engelbert.
Aye.
Roy Engelbert.
Aye.
Inigo.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Gunlickson.
Yes.
Halsted.
Aye.
I'm Peter. Aye. Cook.
Aye.
Kohout. Aye. Lino.
Aye. That has passed.
I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I'm looking at my numbers and I'm thinking that there were 11 no's on, not this one, but the previous.
She's correct.
Well,
The clerk has it recorded. That's it.
Well, I asked her the question before though, what was Susan's vote?
Yeah, no.
No, I have Susan as a no.
Okay, and you still got 11 yeses,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, it's been recorded by the clerk after being asked to count twice.
is it possible for you to read us the no's And then we would know if our individual no was recorded.
How about you tell me who said no?
Okay, I have Bacon, Altman, Shomo, Roy Engelbert, Gunlickson, Peter, Kohout, Lundahl,
I can't hear you.
and Blease Wadachek.
Who was after Lundahl?
Lundahl was a no.
Who did you read after Lundahl?
After Lundahl was Norton, Robillard, and Blease Wadachek.
Okay, I can't hear you.
I have Norton as a yes.
Okay. So the only way to change this, according to corporate counsel, is if somebody makes a motion to reconsider.
I'll make a motion to reconsider Lundahl.
Second.
It has to be somebody who was on the prevailing side.
It has to be somebody who voted on the prevailing side. So somebody who voted yes would have to make the motion to reconsider.
Could I make the motion since I was recorded as yes, but I voted no?
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
Then I'd like to make the motion to re-vote on it.
Motion to reconsider.
Anyone can second.
Lundahl, second.
You ready a second?
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to reconsider with a second. So we'll do a roll call vote.
Could you please restate the motion?
This motion is simply a motion to reconsider the prior motion. So if this gets passed in the affirmative, then we would reconsider the motion that we think was no. I'm sorry, it was yes, sorry. Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote to reconsider the motion.
2020-02.
For 2020-02.
That's not reconsider.
That's not 2020-24.
Minus
Yes.
Norton,
Yes.
Robillard,
Yes.
Verley, Blease Wadachek,
Yes.
Wait,
No.
Austin,
Yes.
Bacon,
Yes.
Boltman,
Yes.
Shomo,
Yes.
David Engelbert,
So vote to reconsider.
David Engelbert,
No.
Roy Engelbert,
Yes.
Inigo,
No.
Fisher,
No.
Gunlickson,
Yes.
Halsted,
Nope.
I'm Peter,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Kohout,
Yes.
Yes.
Lundahl,
Yes.
15-6. 15 yeses, 6 noes.
Okay, so the motion to reconsider has passed. So now we need to reconsider the motion that postponed 2020-02 and 2020-24.
Actually, this is back on the floor.
It's back on, okay, it's back on the floor.
It's back on the floor, so
In the station, in the place it was immediately before the vote.
Which is what?
it's on the floor.
The motion.
Okay, so,
Pending.
all right, so it's on the floor and the vote is now pending.
Yes.
So we moved. Okay, so we move to a roll call vote.
Supervisor Anikel, no more questions, so no more discussion then, right?
You could, the motion reconsider.
Yes, the motion to reconsider does allow additional conversation.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Anikel would like to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay, so a reminder, there is no special meeting. Basically, we have a reorganizational meeting scheduled for the 21st. If they do not, that meeting will not occur as a reorganizational meeting. So that means if we're going to have a meeting in April, it's going to be a regular meeting. This meeting we're at today is a week later than it would normally be held in March. As a reminder that we could easily hold now, if the election does not occur, we could move. That means the special meeting is no longer valid. We could move that meeting 1 week early and have it as a regular meeting, which ultimately means no additional expense to anybody because it would be a regular meeting, just happen to be held a week earlier than normal.
That's true. By statute.
He's saying have a.
We wouldn't you wouldn't ordinarily have to have a meeting. Yeah.
Right, say that again louder, Grant.
I'm confused. Now, if the, I'm going to think out loud here. If the election is postponed beyond the 21st, then there would be, beyond the 20th, excuse me, there would be no reason to have the organizational meeting on the 21st if you did nothing else.
Correct.
Okay, and what was, so you could schedule, I think we're all in agreement, we could schedule another meeting. You would call it an emergency meeting or a regular meeting prior to the end of the day on the.
My view would be, if I'm reading it correctly, is the regular organizational meeting that happens April, the third Tuesday in April, would go away because we did not have the election. But we are still likely to have a meeting in April, which means we can move that particular meeting, instead of being our normal third Tuesday, ahead 1 week to the second Tuesday. So we can have our regular meeting, readjust this issue, and still be in compliance without having to knee-jerk reaction on the possibility that maybe the state would delay the elections. This to me would be comfortable. Other than that, I'm along with Mr. Fisher, where if this that resolution 02 stated that only if we did not have a special meeting, only if we did not have elections, would this ordinance go into effect. But ultimately, we're likely to have an April meeting. It doesn't matter what happens at the governor's and legislature's level as to it's going to be a reorganizational or a regular meeting.
This is Helen Bacon. I'm going back to that emergency meeting we had in which I thought, decided that we would not have individual subcommittee meetings, but we would have 2 county board meetings a month, which would then mean, kind of getting back to my other question, wouldn't there then be a scheduled meeting between now and the 21st?
No, because normally in April, the only meeting held in April would be the reorganizational meeting by statute.
Yeah, but we had talked about not having subcommittee meetings and then doing all the work of the committees at a county board meeting, and that there would be 2 a month, was my understanding. So in my thinking, I would think that we would be scheduling a meeting prior to the 21st, because to get those 2 meetings a month in. We have to do the work of the committees.
Again, Helen, this is Ken. We had brought that up at county board as an option that we could consider having 2 meetings a month. Okay. In our discussions, though, we were not going to do that in April.
Okay. We can, if we need to, we certainly can.
If there's something that came up from the committees that had to be done and we had to do something, we would, but we were not planning on it just based off the election and everything that's going on. We felt comfortable waiting until the 21st.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying.
Mr. Fisher?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an
amendment.
An amendment, thank you, or an addendum placed to have on this ordinance 2020-02 to read that at the end, now, or be it further resolved, ordinance does not take effect unless the scheduled election for April 7th is postponed.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for an amendment. Does everybody understand the amendment? The amendment is basically saying if the election is canceled for April 7th, then the ordinance would go into effect. If the election is not canceled, then the ordinance is moot.
Gunlickson will second that.
And that makes everybody happy. It's a win-win. We pass it with the knowledge that, yeah, if the election is held, it doesn't go into effect, which is what we're trying to accomplish.
We do have a motion on the floor, though.
Yeah.
We can't do that
Mr.
again,
Chairman?
though.
And we can't do an amendment to the motion.
Still.
Okay, hold on.
Got to vote on postponing. You got a.
Okay, wait, Grant.
On the floor is a motion to postpone. That amendment that motion can be amended. It takes a second.
Okay.
And that's where we're at.
Okay, so we have an amendment with a second to the motion. Okay, so we're going to vote. Dan, what?
Well, if that motion that comes passed, that makes a yes vote pass and a no vote pass.
Correct.
No, my understanding of Ken's motion, he's changing the motion to postpone to a motion to amend the ordinance to insert the language that he wanted to insert.
That's what I want in there.
So it's no longer a motion to postpone, it's a motion to amend.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We'll still come back to the postpone.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we, Mr. Chairman?
go ahead.
So right now on the floor, we have a motion to we did a reconsideration, and right now the motion is to postpone resolution 2020-24 and 20.
No, what we have on the floor is an amendment to 2020-02.
02.
Right. And that amendment would make the ordinance moot if the election is held by April 7th. If the election is not held April 7th, then the ordinance would go into effect. That's what's on the floor, is that amendment.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Lundahl.
Go ahead.
So did the postponement that we voted on earlier?
That would remain on the floor once we vote on the amendment.
Actually, I don't want to contradict the chair.
Okay, go ahead, please.
But I think the motion to amend made the motion to postpone go the way of the dodo bird. It's no longer there. Because you switched it from a motion to postpone to a motion to amend. So there's no longer a motion to postpone.
Can we even throw out the motion to postpone? Because we still need to reconsider it.
We amended it.
That's what the amendment is.
Supervisor Anigal here.
We haven't amended it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Grant.
There was an error.
Help me understand this. I understand where you're going with it. Help me understand this. In the past, when a motion was made and seconded it, and then there was a effort to change how that motion was written, which I think is what you're stating right now.
The amendment, correct?
Is that Supervisor Fisher's motion to add the date to 02 throughout the original motion to postpone, correct? That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, so my question is, and I'm sure I'm guessing I have it wrong, but in the past, when I've seen that done, that motion that basically undid the first motion or removed it from existence had to be made by the person that made the original motion.
No, I think anybody can make an amendment to a motion.
Okay, so what is happening at this moment is the original movement of my intent, which was to postpone it until our next regular meeting, which by my definition would either be the reorganizational meeting, if the election went through, or the regularly scheduled April meeting, if the election did not go through. That went out completely. and has been replaced with the amendment to ordinance 02 that includes that date at the end, which I would be comfortable with when we actually go back and discuss this. But I want to make sure I understand that my original motion is out the window and gone then.
Yeah, and I think the circumstances you're referring to in the past, Davey, where we've kind of made friendly withdrawals of motions.
That'd be the cleanest is withdraw.
You could do that too, but.
Say that again.
I think the circumstances that you're remembering is when we've had situations similar where we've had a friendly withdrawal of the.
Correct. Where the individual that originally seconded withdraws his second, and the individual that originally made the motion withdraws the motion. It's a cleaner looking way to do it, but technically this is still legal also.
Yeah, because you're gonna have a vote and it needs to pass by a majority vote on the motion to amend. If the motion to amend does not pass, then you're back with the motion to postpone.
Ah, okay. So then here's the question. The motion right now is to amend the ordinance. If that passes, that means my original motion goes away, which is fine. I understand that. But then we also need a motion to approve the revised ordinance, correct?
Correct.
That would be correct, yes.
Clear as mud. It's helpful to understand.
Right. So what we would be voting on now would be to add the April 7th language to the ordinance. So we're going to do a roll call vote. Again, this is to amend the ordinance to add April 7th vote, that if the vote occurs, this becomes moot, it would go away. If the vote does not occur, then the ordinance would be put into effect.
Can I ask one more question?
Okay, go ahead.
Since then, resolution 24 is the resolution that actually invokes the ability for us to extend our terms. If the resolution modification occurs and that that ordinance modification occurs and that ordinance then gets passed, is the intent of Supervisor Fisher to still resolution 24 then at this same meeting or in a future meeting?
No, that's a separate resolution.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
One moment, please.
2020-24 is a separate resolution.
And I only ask because
he's not tying it to that. No.
Yeah. I asked just to make sure it's clarified because that other half has to happen anyways if the vote does not go through. Right. I mean, I'm sorry. If the governor's, I'm good with the way the supervisor wrote it, but if this resolution 24, in order to be able to do the organizational aspect, the extension of terms, if the vote does not go through on the 7th, we need to have this resolution active as well. Correct?
Yes.
Yes, according to Grant. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Laura, did you have something?
Yes, I did. Just for procedure's sake, it's nice if we could just have even a motion like what happened already on one ordinance or one resolution at a time and not grouping them together. I think that would help not cause more confusion and just be more clear. And even when we're talking, I understand that people want to ask questions about what this will happen and how that all has a chain reaction. But that's one of the reasons too, in certain ways, is because we're grouping it together like we did before. So if we could follow just proper procedure and doing one item at a time, would really be appreciative and clear. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to do a roll call vote on the amending of ordinance 2020-02 to include the April 7th voting date. Jill?
All right. Norton,
Yes.
Robillard,
Yes.
Burley,
Yes.
Lee's Watercheck,
Yes.
Wait,
Yes.
Austin,
Yes.
Bacon,
Yes.
Boltman,
Yes.
Shomo,
Yes.
David Engelbert,
Yes.
Roy Engelbert,
Yes.
Inigo,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Gunlickson,
Yes.
Olsted,
Yes.
Pine Peter,
Yes.
Pine Peter,
Yes. 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 Can you hear me?
Yes.
yeah, mute yourself. Cook,
Yes.
Kohout,
Yes.
Lino,
Yes.
Lundahl,
Yes.
Ninus.
Yes.
Okay, so that has passed. So now on the floor would be the motion to, I'm looking at Grant.
Motion to enact or not in the ordinance.
Well, okay, so there are no other motion open on the floor then.
In my view, yes. There's no other motion.
In your view, there's no other motions on the floor. Okay. So now a motion to enact 2020-02 would be in order.
Mr.
Or to pass,
Chairman,
yes.
Ken Fisher, I'll make a motion, we adopt as amended, ordinance number 2020-02.
I'll
Second,
second. Nessa.
Any other discussion before we go to a roll call vote?
Linda, wait.
Go ahead, Linda.
In the roll call on the left-hand side of the page, you don't have weight down. And there's Schultz, so that needs to be corrected. And then also in line 32, this addresses each current incumbent seeking reelection. So I'm guessing that any incumbent not seeking reelection would be subject to the chairman's appointment. Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
we're talking about ordinance 2020-02 only at this moment.
Oh, I thought we moved on to the resolution.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
We had an amendment. Now we have to vote on the ordinance.
Okay, got it.
Anybody else on the 2020-02 before we move to the roll call? Joe?
okay, let me think about this. Okay. Robillard,
Could you repeat the motion, please?
Motion to adopt 2020-02 amended.
Okay. Thank you.
okay, roll call, Robillard,
Yes.
Lucy,
Yes.
Lee's Watercheck,
Yes.
Wait,
Yes.
Austin,
Yes.
Bacon,
Yes.
Boltman,
Yes.
Shomo,
Yes.
Engelbert, David Engelbert,
Yes.
Roy Engelbert,
Yes.
Inigo,
Yes.
Fisher,
Aye.
Gunlickson,
Yes.
Olsted,
Yes.
Pine Peter,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Kohout,
Yes.
Lino,
Yes.
Lundahl, Ninus,
Yes.
Norton,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2020-02 has passed. How many?
I can go to 2024.
4. Okay. So now that would lead us back up to resolution 2020-24, declaring and filling vacancies on the Door County Board if the April 7th election is postponed.
Mr. Chairman, Ken Fisher, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-24 as written.
Well, second.
Now with this question,
We have a motion and a second. Is there any question?
Okay, Linda, wait again.
Yes, Linda, go ahead.
Again, with the correction on the roll call voting spreadsheet there. And then also line 32, each current incumbent seeking reelection, I assume that a current incumbent not seeking reelection, that vacancy would be filled by the as appointed by the chairman or the interim if needed.
yeah, take out seeking reelection.
I question that as well.
The idea being,
I think Linda's right. I think we need to strike seeking reelection from the line because it's irrelevant.
No, hold on a second. No, it's not. Hold on. Let Grant respond.
this was a subject of a lot of debate and research, and the conclusion I reached, and I think the majority of the corporation councils who were involved in this effort reached, was at the point that you declared your non-candidacy, you would not be eligible for appointment to this interim term. Nor would the person seeking election, because they haven't been elected, so those positions would just sit vacant. The interim period between when the election from April 21st until the election is held and those seats are filled. If it became a significant period of time, and we'd have to decide what that was, then the county board chairperson would have the ability to fill that vacancy, or the county board for that matter could, because at that point you would be acting as a self-organized board. I should go on further to explain there is some question across the state on whether an election that is contested, whether you should appoint the incumbent. Our issue is there are enough contested elections in addition to the two vacancies that it would be difficult for the county board to act. And in fact, the county board would not be able to take action if we did not appoint the incumbent to the interim board, because I think we'd be down to 12 or 13. So you'd never be able to reach the 14 majority you would need for 2/3 vote.
Does that answer your question, Linda?
Yeah, I was not asking for the verbiage to be removed. I just wanted to be sure that if there was a vacancy for any district, that they would have representation, hopefully that the chairman or the county board, whatever procedure is in effect for filling a vacancy, that would happen if needed.
Okay. Anybody else?
A question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Biz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if this resolution 2024 passes, then the current county board people that don't have any opposition are going to continue on the board, but there still will not be committee meetings. And we gave authority to the chairman and the administrator to make decisions. Would meet twice a month as a board to ratify the chairman and the administrator's decisions. Is this a fair statement?
Yes, I would say yes, if necessary. Yes.
Thank you.
I do want to clarify one thing you said, Biz. You said only those people that were running unopposed. Is that what you said?
Yeah. It's unopposed and incumbent.
Right. It'd be unopposed and incumbent. So even though somebody may be opposed for the election, if the election is not held yet, that supervisor would continue as a supervisor until the election was actually held.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Would a writing candidate mean you were opposed?
For purposes of this, it wouldn't make any difference. Because the incumbent board member would continue.
I'll be back.
Yeah, if the election didn't happen, then you don't know what the rating was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? So we're going to go to a roll call vote on this one. Jill enjoys these roll call votes.
Mr. Chairman, can we wait till the 21st? Mr. Fisher left.
Way back.
Greg Ready?
Yes.
Hurley,
Aye.
Lees Wanacek,
Aye.
Wait,
Aye.
Austin,
Yes.
Bacon,
Aye.
Boltman.
Aye.
Shomo.
Aye.
David Engelbert,
No.
Roy Engelbert,
Yes.
Go,
Aye.
Fisher stepped out, Donaldson,
Yes.
Halsted,
Aye.
Hein Peter,
Aye.
Cook,
Yes.
Kohout,
Yes.
Lino,
Yes.
Lundahl. Yes. Ninus,
Yes.
Norton,
Yes.
Robillard,
One more time.
Oh, yes.
and then Fisher.
She hit her button. Spent from the edge here.
We're waiting on Mr. Fisher to return.
This is. Oh, shake them up.
I already canceled 2 meetings.
Would be more happy to go pick up his yes and no here city.
I canceled my one. I thought we'd be Monday. I'd rather open a window. No, that would create a draft and then. That Indian attire is looking.
Yeah, I know, but John, 20 years.
Yes.
Oh.
15 seconds.
I think we should have a policy for the year of records.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad you were. So is it for me to vote?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody voted except you.
Oh, isn't that special?
Fisher,
And what motion are we on, or what are we? Just tell me which one it is.
Tell them what to say. Just see what to say.
you have 20 ayes and 1 no.
Okay, that is
Thank you
passing
for
a motion
waiting
of
for
20 ayes and 1 nay. Okay. We have 2 more things to finish. Please mute yourselves. Somebody is shuffling a lot of papers again near the microphone, which makes it impossible to hear on this end. Thank you. We have 2 items left. I'm going to recommend that we postpone the evaluation process for the county administrator. And we move to the summary of accomplishments. I asked this to be put together so everybody was aware of some of the things that have occurred over this last term. I say here, we don't take a lot of time to reflect on what we've accomplished as a county or as a county board. It's important to acknowledge the work of all of our supervisors and thank each and every one of us for the service you've given over the 2018-2020 term. Between our time with constituents, committee meetings, tours, conferences, and county board meetings, you've all provided a great service to the residents and visitors of Door County, which they rarely see the depth of time and the involvement that all of you have. So I want to just personally say thank you. I'm not going to go through all the things that occurred, but there is quite a list of things that we accomplished. And I just want to say personally thank you as county board chair for your support and for all the time that each of you have done out in the community as committees with your constituents, with employees, and look forward to an election and we move ahead to our next board. So thank you very much. There are two announcements. Currently the regularly scheduled county board meeting would be April 21st for the organizational meeting. Our per diem code for today is 331. Mr. Fisher would like to make a brief announcement, followed by an announcement by Mr. Osted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number one, I'm happy to see that the island got a shipment of razors in lately.
Yeah, you're right. I was supposed to be in Florida.
The other thing is, normally I make the motion to adjourn, but I'm going to give my time over to Mr. Austin because I understand he has an announcement.
Well, first I'd like to acknowledge that Linda Waite and John Linus aren't going to be on county board, especially with John. 20 years I served with him. It's been a pleasure. And I finally got to meet someone from the Deep South. And I think we had a lot of good times together.
Yes, we did.
And I think you should make the motion to adjourn and get the hell out of here.
I think we should give a round of applause to those two.
Thank Mr. Osted for our buttons and how great that was, because he's the gentleman that put this in place. And with that, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
John, you will be missed.